Our prayer this morning is by Kathy Ryan Starr. Spirit of spring and new life, spirit of decay and death, we turn to your wisdom and strength as we seek to live lives of meaning and love. The cycle of life is powerful. Everything that lives dies. Everything that dies has lived. There is no escaping this cycle. What then can we learn from its power? The leaves that we put away in the fall are now compost, fertilizing the soil as we prepare to till the garden for this year's planting. That harbinger of spring, the crocus, brings such delight and lasts but for a moment. Then it's gone, making way for the abundance of green and color that spring will bring. When one who was beloved dies, we cry, we mourn, we lament, and we carry them on in our hearts, seeking to live as they inspired us to live. As a child grows, we marvel at their unfolding into their own unique self. These lives we live hold so much beauty and so much pain, and we, like each of our ancestors across the millennia, seek to live them fully. We seek love. We seek to appreciate beauty. We seek solace and healing. We seek to hold fast to the core of goodness of this world and to amplify its abundance. We seek one another, for no one can do this alone. Now, in the company of many, let us enter a time of silence. May this silence be a time to honor that which your heart seeks. We have 2 readings this morning, and I invite Rosa to come forward for our first reading.
Tiny sparkles from diamond drops of ice, high up in the naked branches of the maple and elm, reflect the sun through my window and work at distracting me. Beneath their frozen coats, the tiny buds of spring wait to be born. But winter has one last picture to show me before spring comes laughing to the trees. As if they were working together in this month between seasons. Sunshine, catbirds, and crocuses for spring, and icicles hanging on pine needles, and cardinals picking sunflower seeds of the snow-drifted bird feeder for winter. The 2 seasons call forth from me a great Amen. Here we are then, between seasons, not knowing for sure what to do next. Do we conserve and play it safe against an unexpected onslaught striking us like one last winter blast? Or do we cast off our coats and take a risk, daring to embrace the spring which is not quite here? Thank God we have each other and this place of worship to come to. When we need to make decisions in our search for both security and renewal. May we remember in the chilliest winter storm or the balmiest spring morning that this place is here for us, that we share in creation's love, no matter what the season.
Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there is a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in a lake. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible, and for every kind stranger, there is one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I am trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real dirt hole chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful. Poet Maggie Smith, not the Dowager Countess, by the way, a different Maggie Smith, was surprised last year when her poem, Good Bones, went viral. It's kind of a poet's dream, right? To have your work read by 1 million people. And then a few months later, there was a resurgence of popularity, and the poem took flight again, landed in hundreds of email inboxes, got thousands of likes on Facebook. There was a downside. Maggie Smith's poem, Good Bones, spiked in popularity this year each time there was a tragedy. Each time something hard and difficult and unbelievable had happened. The world is 50% terrible, and it is during that 50% of the time that people turn to Maggie's poem for solace. Good Bones was initially published in the journal Waxwing 3 days after a gunman killed 49 people at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. A reader, moved by the poem's message, posted a screenshot on Facebook where a Brooklyn-based musician read it and passed it along on Twitter. As the poem traveled across the web, its celebrity endorsements got bigger. Alyssa Milano passed it on, and Megan Mullally. One day, Maggie Smith ran into a friend in her small town in Ohio who told her, "I just read your poem on Charlotte Church's Twitter." In the November days following the presidential election, 3 poems circulated like wildfire on the internet. Maya Angelou's Still I Rise, W.H. Auden's September 1st, 1939, and Maggie Smith's Good Bones. The poem has become something of a social anxiety barometer. I can tell something bad is happening in the world when my poem is surging, Maggie says. So her pleasure in her success is a little bittersweet. It's a weird thing, she says, to have your poem's success and in turn your success be tied to something that is shared because things are terrible. But in a way, it's fitting that her success be complicated. Life being complicated is a major theme of her poetry. I think of this poem, she says, and many of the poems I've written since having children as being conflicted. How do we love this world as it is, with all of its flaws and dangers? And how do we teach our kids to love it? How do we sell them the world without lying to them about its realities? How do we let them see the rotten parts? Because we must eventually. And how do we empower them to do good and force change? Beloved children's book author E.B. White once said, "I arise in the morning torn between a desire to save the world and desire to savor the world. This makes it hard to plan the day. I've always loved that quote. It's so true. We wake torn between those competing desires to save the world and to savor it. E.B. White wrote for children, but his stories were complicated too. Do you remember Charlotte's Web? It starts with a little girl named Fern who begs her father to spare the life of a little runt piglet who she names Wilbur. She hand feeds the tiny pig until it is strong enough to be on its own, and then she is forced to sell the pig to her uncle, who has a barnyard down the road. Wilbur the pig is snubbed by the other barn animals, but he is finally befriended by a barn spider named Charlotte. When Wilbur is scheduled for slaughter, he is distraught. But Charlotte hatches a plan. She weaves an intricate web above Wilbur's pen, which says, "Some pig." And Wilbur is saved because he becomes famous. Charlotte spins other messages, ensuring his safety for the future. Soon after Wilbur is entered into the county fair, Charlotte spins something else, an egg sack. But this takes all her energy, and Wilbur is overwhelmed with grief when she tells him that she will not live to see her baby spiders born. After Charlotte's death, Wilbur protects her egg sac, and then is saddened further when the new spiders depart shortly after hatching. They have their own lives to live. But the three smallest spiders remain, and Wilbur names them Joy, Nellie, and Aranea. It's a children's story, but it's a very complex emotional story, even for adults. Charlotte works so hard to save Wilbur, knowing that whole time that her own life is going to be a short one. She is not destined for the future. But even so, she puts all her energy into weaving those webs and into spinning that egg sac, building for the future, a future she will never get to see herself. And Wilbur can't save Charlotte, but he can save her egg sac. But Wilbur doesn't know whether to grieve or celebrate when those baby spiders come into the world. His friend is still gone. He is not needed in the way that he needed Charlotte. It's hard. The world is half terrible. And we keep that from our children because we still want them to love the other 50%. We still want them to savor the world, even as we are not sure that we can save it. I wish I had written a poem that people share when babies are born or people get married, Maggie laughed. But still, she doesn't see the message of good bones as pessimistic. I don't think I could write a poem that the world is beyond repair, she says. Even if the world may seem at times like a dilapidated house that only a fool would buy, it still has good bones. My hope, Maggie says, is that the poem is a call to improve it anyway. Maybe that is our task here on this earth, to leave things just a little bit better than how we found them. Barring that, maybe our task is to raise a generation of children who love the imperfect world we are passing on to them. You know, this time of year is a funny in-between kind of time, isn't it? It's like spring limbo. We have this cautious optimism that it's going to be warm soon, that things are going to start to grow and bloom. We can almost feel it in the air. But at the same time, it's still freezing out there. The days are longer, which is awesome. They are still gray. Today is pretty nice, but yesterday was such a gray day. It kind of matches where my soul is, that in-between feeling, that not knowing whether to grieve or celebrate, that feeling of being torn between savoring or saving the world, that knowledge that the world is half terrible, but that there's still that other half, and that half is calling for our attention too. You know who really knows what to do with this time of year? The really good gardeners know what to do. And they are busy buying seeds. They are poring over seed catalogs and charting out garden rows. They are dreaming up their gardens. And they're even beginning to plant the most hardy, cold-enduring seeds in that hard earth, or in little seed pots in windowsills and greenhouses, wherever they can best catch the light. This is what the really good gardeners have taught me. Now, when it's cold and gray and dreary and you can't imagine a garden, now is the time to imagine a garden, to plan and prepare and begin the garden. If we wait for the full sunlight, the warm days, the return of all the birds, it will be too late. Our gardens will be behind. We won't have the seeds sprouted, ready. And you know what? Life is unpredictable. Some of the seeds we plant won't make it. Many of the things we plant a month from now won't be ready for harvest until the fall. We don't even know if we're going to be around in the fall to harvest our gardens. These gardeners, though, they plant them anyway. It's cold and dreary out there, but now is the time to plant dreams, to plant hope, to plant joy, to plant justice, to plant love. Maybe we won't live to see them bloom, but maybe the children will, or the grandchildren. Maybe they will be better gardeners than we are, better architects, better designers. Maybe they'll have a stronger vision. Kids, this world that we're giving to you, this world you're inheriting from us, it's a fixer-upper. But it has good bones. You could make this place beautiful. May it be so. Amen.